This is the complete Werewolf mansion, and the purpose of this building is to play a game on the server here, the third world server, called Werewolf. And a brief synopsis, I can't pronounce that word, a brief summary of how Werewolf is played is basically there are a group of people who are innocents, and then there's one person who is secretly a werewolf, and each night the werewolf kills an innocent, and then during the day the innocents try to find clues and evidence to figure out who the werewolf is, and then at the end of the day before night they vote to execute someone in hopes of executing the werewolf. And depending on how many people are playing at once, there could be multiple werewolves. Generally it requires at least 9 people to play. And this right here is the parlor. This room right here is where people will gather for the final votes. People will use signs to place who they're voting to execute right here. And then the person at the end who's voted to be executed will stand here while everyone runs into this little spot here. This is meant to be sort of like a cloak hanging area that's been stripped bare for voting. But the other players will rush in and sort of beat the voted off person to death. And the judge will sit here. The judge is an impartial player who's isn't actually involved, knows who the werewolf is, but obviously doesn't tell people. And in here is the dining hall. It's an auxiliary room, at least in the purposes of the werewolf game, but it could also serve as a place, I suppose, for all the players to gather and sort of debate or discuss the evidence that they found for the day. And also throughout all the rooms, depending on at the judge's discretion, clues will be placed around the mansion. Over here is the conversation room. It doesn't really serve any purpose, not any practical function for the game itself, other than just another room for the game master, which is the judge, to sort of take a sign and maybe hide a clue somewhere in this room. And this here is the drawing room, just another room, sort of the way I had this in mind for the werewolf mansion is sort of just to set up these extra rooms, obviously to make the mansion big, but also just sort of, if you ever played the board game Clue, just to leave, have rooms for people to explore while they're looking for clues, or just maybe waiting for everyone else to make up their mind on who they want to vote to execute. And before we go upstairs, we'll take a look at the lower basement, which is for the servants, and the kitchen and the larder. This room belongs to Servant B, and during the night all the players will be sent to their rooms, and they're required to not leave the room for the duration of the night as the werewolf stalks their prey. The subterranean here was part of my experiment to see if could prevent other players from seeing the person in the next room down the hall see their tag, to prevent them from seeing other players' tags, just to avoid exploits. It doesn't really work very well, so I just didn't want to take the time to remove the obsidian, so it might help a little bit. And this is just the larder here. There's nothing in any of the chests. And there's another servant room over here. And this is the kitchen here. It's got 2 sinks, some ovens for cooking, and just crafting tables, or just sort of like a cutting board, and then stone slabs as a just general preparation surface. And then there's just 3 more rooms over here. So there's 5 rooms for players down below. Now there's more rooms on the 2nd floor. This is the room for guest A. Most of these rooms are fairly unadorned. I may eventually add more decoration later on. And there's 2 rooms in this section, so that's 7 rooms total so far. This here is just another guest room. And this wing of the mansion is kind of bare. I'll definitely come back at a later point and add more stuff to it. This here is the library, and I forgot to put some signs labeling it as such. But there's a bunch of books, some couches and chairs for people to read and study. And right over here real quick there's a balcony to look out at the countryside. The next place over here is another wing that has another room. So that's 9 guest rooms total. Then up above we've got a fairly unadorned room here. I'm not sure what to put here. I'll probably eventually put some more decoration stuff, like some potted plants. I need to get some clay before I do that. And over here there are 2 more guest rooms. Sort of the conversation place here to sit on the couch, and there's a sort of like a coffee table going on there. Another guest room. And a 3rd guest room in this wing. So that puts it up to 12 rooms for 12 players so far, and then there's the one final room, which is the master bedroom, which belongs to the owner and master of the mansion. And this wing is purely just for the owner of the mansion, the lord of the mansion. This is the private reading room. There is nothing over here yet. I will plan on adding stuff here. This is just the sleeping quarters. And up here is the attic space, and I'll be adding more ladders to the attic space later. There isn't really anything in here except for empty chests and these blocks of wood with signs on them, which are supposed to represent crates. And this is supposed to represent a small crate. We've got the roof here, which is accessible, although it's not really meant to be, but it doesn't matter. And just more attic space. Oh, that isn't lit quite as well as it should be. That is the interior, and I will now cut away and show the exterior. So here we are once again. I'm just going to take a look at the outside of the mansion. This is either the 4th or 5th iteration of the Werewolf Mansion. This iteration is actually smaller than the previous version, but the previous version was a lot more simpler. It didn't have as complicated as design patterns. It was mostly just 3 types of wood. The spruce logs there, and the spruce wood, and then just oak logs and oak wood. I'm eventually going to be adding more stuff as I go, like maybe a graveyard and sort of a garden area. As it is, though, I couldn't really afford to record much more building in the time-lapse. As it is, it took 8 hours of recorded footage and 1.1 terabytes of hard disk space to make this video. Oh, and this is just sort of I forget the word escapes me, but it's sort of like a patio area, but it's, well, I guess some people call ground level areas patios too, but and there's just some bushes, and I need to flesh out more shrubbery. And that is pretty much it. If you are a regular viewer of the Mirglof build series, you may have noticed that I foregoed the usual intro, which I'm just sort of experimenting with this layout. When I just sort of watched my old videos, I was thinking that the intro in which I, introduce myself and then explain what I'm going to build is probably pretty redundant and not necessary. And so I'm just experimenting with just going straight to the time lapse. And because I'm recording in a third person now using a second account, I can speed up the time lapse, because before I was in first person. If I sped it up to anything faster than 8 seconds, 8 times as fast normal speed, it would induce sort of motion sickness. So what this was recorded at was 32, I guess, frames per second. I don't know, not frames per second, but like 32 seconds, a ratio of 32 seconds to 1, if that makes sense. So for every 1 second of or every 32 seconds of recorded footage equates to 1 second. And also another thing that I'm going to be trying different in just the way that these videos are produced, I usually at the beginning of the video thank people for subscribing, and I'll still continue to do that, but I'm going to try having the people that I'm thanking for subscribing, putting them in sort of like a rolling credits at the end of the video. So definitely let me know what you guys think of that, and we'll see. It's sort of experimenting a little bit, but that is really it for now. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys later.